it's me, Kevin Smith. Welcome to Masters of the Universe Revelation Celebration, a celebration of the writers behind Masters of the Universe Revelation. I'm sitting right next to one of the said writers right now, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Sheridan brought. I can't undersell Tim Sheridan as a writer. He came into my life by way of probably Teddy, right?
Yeah. Well, I knew Rob too.
Yeah.
I had met with Rob before, but yeah, Teddy and I've known each other forever.
Like the never mind the writing that you get out of a Tim Sheridan. Like that's just fucking top notch because you've probably seen his work. Right now he's got Long Halloweens out. What was the other DC things you did?
I've done Reign of the Superman and Superman Man of Tomorrow. Those were movies. I've done a lot of TV shows for them. I got DC Comics I'm working on now. I had Teen Titans Academy, Shazam miniseries. So lots of.
Look at the humble bragging. And what about the TV stuff? Then you do Transformers.
Yeah, Transformers: War for Cybertron, also on Netflix. I did season 2 and 3 of that.
So long tail, with a lot of fucking writing, particularly in the genre. So I remember Teddy was like, I got this guy, Tim, man. I think you should meet with him. I think he'd be great in the room. He knows Motu as well. And so not only did we get great stuff as promised out of Tim, just as a writer, but Tim, in this episode, the presentation of the script even was so delightful because this is our Scareglow episode. And, the first time that we get to actually play with that character in this iteration of Masters of the Universe. They probably did in the Mike Young production.
No, this is his first time on screen.
They didn't do him in the Mike Young.
Oh my God, I'm gonna get.
I just assumed they did everything in the Mike Young version.
I am 99% sure that he's never been on screen before.
So this could be it. This was a character that started as an action figure that never made it onto the cartoon because the cartoon was canceled by the time the action figure was in production or out there in the world. So they stopped making the Filmation cartoon, so Scareglow never got to be in the cartoon. Same with Clamp Champ, I believe. So the idea here was like, ooh, we get to play with him for the first time, and he is represented as our Lord of Hell in our storyline. But what Tim did in just writing a script, which I was like, I will take with me for the rest of my life. Whenever he wrote Scareglow's dialogue, he upper and lower cased it. He just made it look crazy.
The Mad Hatter font.
The Mad Hatter font from Long Halloween.
I had recently scripted Long Halloween, and there was just, I don't know why. There was something about it that made sense for
It's
Scareglow.
chaotic and anarchic, and so as you're reading it on the page, you're engaged because you're like, oh, this guy's fucked up. Simply because he just and lowered, uppercase, lowercase and stuff. But shit like that, matters because people read this shit. Yeah. And so, right away, I was like, that's a way right into an executive's fucking heart, man. You communicate so much about the character, not with just the dialogue, but just even in the presentation of the script form.
That's the first thing. I mean, people kind of discount that. You think you're just writing it for the actors to do it, but no, it's got to go through a bunch of people who have to read it first.
Yeah.
And so, if you can liven it up on the page, make it interesting. And it kind of gave everybody an idea of the voice that I had in my head, too. Which... You ended up,
finding the voice for it.
The voice.
Looking at the font adds to that. Because when you're looking at it it's got to be fucking crazy. It's got to be out there. It's got to be deep. It's got to be fucking, scary. Then we were like, oh my God, what about fucking Tony?
Could anybody else? Could anybody?
And by the way, so happy to do it. Really, happy. Not for lack of work. Dude's always fucking working. But, he was like, oh my God, thank you for letting me do this. And we're like, are you kidding me? Thank you for doing it. And then in press, too. Like when we did the after show, he was incredibly oh, my God, everyone, the world is excited for this. People can't wait to see it. He's really on board.
He played Darkseid in my Reign of the Superman.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
He's got a great voice for
That's where I met him. I was just like, who's Tony Todd?
Yeah, it's all right. So you worked with him twice. It's dope.
Yeah.
Let's dive in, shall we? This is episode 4, kids. Do you remember the name of your?
It's called Land of the Dead now. Originally, I think it had a title that was probably a little too.
It was referential.
Spoilery, or it was too. It actually told you a little too much, I think, about where we were going.
What was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was called Fall of a Sparrow.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you've seen the episode, which hopefully you have, you'll understand that maybe that's tipping a little too much.
That is actually giving away a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting. All right. So episode 4. Line up your 000s and get ready to press play. press and play right now. Here is the logo coming up, a Netflix original series.
Isn't that
We're
awesome?
watching an old version, so ours says anime series.
Oh, right.
Because originally we began life as an anime series. That's what they were calling us. And then when we were halfway through, they're like, this is just an animated series. Land of the Dead, you're right, is the episode that we went with, the episode title we went with.
So much better.
Because obviously we take place in Land of the Dead. Right here, now this is just to illustrate how great of a writer Tim is.
Go on.
I didn't really touch Tim's script. It was so fucking like pitch perfect. However, this opening the opening poem that or children's nursery rhyme that Orco is saying, that came in very late in production. Is like when Netflix saw the episodes and stuff, you get notes back, and one of the notes was like, hey, it's a little dry in there. Can we set up Scare Glow? And sometimes as writers, you take for granted, like, oh, it's going to be wicked when Scare Glow. But sometimes there are people going to be watching this, never even fucking heard of a Scare Glow, never heard the name and shit. So
he needed some help. You're absolutely right about that. And I think that
wasn't even my idea. I think that was Teddy going, put something in there.
It's definitely nice Teddy to have those guys.
Teddy and Rob, as I've said before, like, it was like playing fucking, it's like bowling when they put the bumpers in the fucking in the gutters, where it's like you can't lose because these two dudes are like, well, you could do this or do this instead.
Yeah, this was such a better opening too for the episode. The chunk that I had written, I think you ended up moving into the very end of episode 3, where they arrive at the gate to.
So what happened originally in the end of 3? So that's how 3. No, how 4.
Yeah, it was how 4 began. Was them arriving at the gate and then making the decision to go in, and but to start it right here, it made so much more sense. I think when you're watching every episode back to back, the flow of it, and it also gave us a little real estate in episode 4.
It gave us some nice real estate, and also it gives you a reason to watch episode 4. It's like, okay, they're walking into hell. What's going to happen next? And so you get to tune in.
And this is, this was the dream of a lifetime. Getting to create a scene with a whole episode between Orco and Evil-Lyn.
And let me tell you something. Like, I remember I asked Ted in the beginning when we were working on this, I was like, who's your favorite character? And he's like, Evil-Lyn. I was like, come on, Ted. Nobody's favorite character is Evil-Lyn. Not even like the girls. And he's like, no, I thought that character is very layered, very nuanced. He's like, I've always loved her. And by the end of this process, she became everybody's favorite character, and it has a lot to do with this episode. Up till now, we've definitely had Evil-Lyn as we've known her previously in the past, maybe a bit more well-written in 2021 and stuff, and definitely sounding cooler as Lena Headey.
Oh, my God.
But here is where Tim establishes the fucking meat of what Evil-Lyn will become. And we get to hear some humanity in her as she deals with Orco, and we also get to find out Orco backstory as well. Like incredibly moving stuff that take those characters way down the playing field, if that's some sort of analogy to use.
A couple of things about that. First of all, I was in the middle of scripting this episode when I got the call saying that Lena had agreed to play Evil-Lyn.
So you got to write to her voice.
I ran back, opened up the script, and started rewriting all of Evil-Lyn's dialogue because I knew what she can do. And she just surpassed all expectations.
We were scared when she came into the room, like, not scared.
Because she's so powerful.
She's incredibly powerful. And she also very intimidating. She's a very dry sense of humor and stuff, which if you don't know if she's kidding, you're like, I don't think this lady likes me. But when she was coming in, we were like, do we ask her to do Cersei? Because that's what we all wanted, was like, just fucking give us Cersei, man. Like, it's Cersei's voice as Evil-Lyn. And, mercifully, she... has a voice, and she sounds like Cersei. So we didn't have to ask, like, Lena, can you lean into Cersei? All we had to do was be like, Lena, you can chew the scenery. And she was able to, because, like, you're animated, everything gets to be bigger and grander. But she also has real subtlety to her performance, which in animation, like, you never want. You want larger than life. But the boys, Pat and Adam, our directors, are so good. They were able to bring subtle things that she did with her voice to life.
You need it. You need it to really, and in a show like this, you've got to have those quiet moments. And I think that really helped in certain terms of setting up where we're going with her later on. You really get to know Evil-Lyn in a different way, I think,
Completely.
in this episode. And this guy, Scareglow, Tony Todd, I mean, it's just unreal.
And this was now, in terms of like writing, handing out the scripts and whatnot, I wrote one, Dia got episode 2, because it kicks off like the Andra storyline, so we were like, give it to Dia. She's the one that gets us to Motherboard and stuff like that. Mark had establishing Duncan, who Duncan is now in our story.
And Orco, I mean,
And
setting
you got to
up.
set up Orco. And then, so you got to do the human Evil-Lyn, the human Orco, the heroic Orco, which is, we'll get to later on. But more importantly, Scareglow. For the first time ever, you get to handle Scareglow. How do you approach the character?
Yeah, well, Scareglow was actually an easier in than I thought, because in many ways, this episode is, and opinions will vary on this, yours too. I feel like this episode, maybe it's just the way I came at it, is more like structured more like a traditional old sort of cartoon that I watched when I was a kid, maybe you watched, and maybe even an old Motu episode, in that, we meet this new villain who has these new powers. The powers are somehow related to what our heroes are going through. They have to grow by dealing with his power set, with the fear element, and that. So in some ways, it was very much kind of very traditional in that way.
It's so wild, like to hear you break it down like that. That never occurred to me, but you're right. It's very like this could have been an episode of Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think we really tried to elevate it a little bit when you had people like Lena and
But
Griffin
in terms
and
of
Tony.
structure, though, it is very much like, all right, here's your bad guy. Now we're going to tell you a story, and we're going to jump out to all these satellites.
What's funny is we all looked at this as kind of a bottle episode for a while in the room, and we were talking
Explain
about
bottle
it.
episode.
So the bottle episode is the one that sort of sits outside the story that you're telling over the course of maybe a season or a series, and it can sort of be, it lives in its own bottle.
Right.
It can be kind of taken out, and you can still follow the whole story. We
Like
kind
he
of
wouldn't
looked at it.
technically he wouldn't have needed to read episodes 1, 2, 3, or 5 to
Right.
tell his story.
But it turned out, I think we ended up.
It's very much
It doesn't
it's
feel-
cartilage.
yeah,
it's
part of it,
Yeah, it's very much holding story together.
I'm going to
And here-
praise Eric Carrasco for a minute, if I can.
Yes,
who's-
Eric is our writer on episode 5, who we'll see in the next episode. But
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
we talk about everything when we're doing this stuff, and he looked at a draft of this and he said, I think you need to make room, and it was so tight, like there wasn't really a lot of room for
Yeah,
stuff.
there was
And
a
we
big
all-
page count issue early on where it was like, at one point it was like 30 pages tops, and they were like, no more than 15 pages. And we were like, what? What's going on? But it all got worked out. But yes, so
But Eric,
there was tight.
No, really wisely, I needed the outside eye to say, before I ever showed it to you, to say, you need to do a little bit more with Orco here. We've got to set up more and remember why we love him and fall back in love
Especially
with him.
based on what happens at the end
That's
of the episode.
the reason, and so we'll see that play out. But Eric was absolutely right. Normally, you shy away from writing monologues in
Right.
an animated show, but
Not in this fucking show.
This is like a page-long monologue.
It's
from Orco.
it's monologues of the universe.
And
essentially.
Griffin,
Magical.
heartbreakingly
Such
magical.
a secret weapon. Now, who came up with Oracle Orco?
Well, you're looking at the guy. Well, no, listen. Now there is a Motu.
Great fucking line.
There is a Motu tradition. There is a character called Oracle that we met certainly on screen in the Mike Young show, and it is implied that is like an ancient Orco, perhaps, from sort of like the way it's also implied sometimes that Scareglow might be Skeletor. We kind of
Right.
play with that a little bit.
We
We
do a
don't
little
really
bit.
go there, but we sort of acknowledge the fact
You have that
there's-
line where he's just like, she's like Skeletor, and he's like, I remember the name. No, but no,
So we acknowledge it, but we don't really necessarily go there, right? Same thing with Orco and Oracle.
This line right here, this magic line where Evil-Lyn kind of shows her heart, wears her heart on her sleeve, and talks about like it's magic. Mark this moment, because that line is so strong, it winds up defining the next 5 episodes, part 6 through 10. And the directors reference it directly, like brought it back. That line will return, ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
something that's always fascinated me. The concept of sorcery
Beautiful
versus
moment,
magic.
like
you
where
know?
she talks about, like, he's telling the Oracle story, and she's oddly, even though she's very dismissive, suddenly like, I've got stories of my own, and I feel a way about magic. And she's talking to one person. Think about it. She could never have that conversation at Snake Mountain. She can't tell fucking Skeletor, like, I think it's magic. He's like, you jerk. Can't tell anyone else. So here she's got this guy, and she opens up her heart a little bit. This has the classic kind of relationship too of two characters that would never be teamed up, having to come together, work together, and bringing, finding out a lot about each other. Very enemy mind, very the defiant ones, finding out who they are by working together.
If I could have written just an entire season long, just the two of them, I would have done it.
I would have read it. It would have been amazing.
Obviously, here we get back to the meat and the main story, and that's Tila's journey.
And the structure of this was really nice because it does. You get to jump away. We're with Tila, we're with Beastman and Andra and Roboto, and then we're also with Orco and Evil-Lyn, like doing 3 different stories before we're going to bring them all together.
And here's the spectral He-Man. Now this is, I say it's, the story of this episode, the main story is Tila's story. It's not really, it's Tila and He-Man's story.
Yeah.
But we see it through what's happening with Tila right now. And it's part of the thing that we knew we were going to do, that you knew we were going to do right at the beginning, which was talking about secrets.
Yes. The whole thing is based on deception. We'll go back to this in a second, but somebody on the internet pointed out this is the first iteration of He-Man where you see his nipples on either side of the chest plate. And I know that's a Pat and Adam thing, probably an Adam thing.
I want to know who pointed that out. That's
somebody who's really looking. But
I've been looking. I didn't.
Isn't that nuts? Because then I went and checked it. I was like, wow, they must have done, maybe not in the 1983, but surely Mike Young put nipples, and no. We're the first ones where they're like, hey, man, that's where the nips would be.
Do we ever get a good close-up of the nip that we might see some hair maybe or something?
I don't think they went that far.
No,
I think they're more Joel Schumacher clean
Oh,
nipples.
yeah.
But still, it was, when I hadn't thought about it, when I saw it online, I was like, right on. Another first for us.
Can I also say something about Tiffany Smith?
Amazing.
I mean, she's so amazing. And it was, like I said, there wasn't a lot of real estate in here, to be able to develop a lot of character. You really look for opportunities. Andra, I thought, well, this is a good chance to let her step up and see her in a leadership role. Mm-hmm. And I just think Tiffany plays the humor perfectly, but then switches and can play, I'm the boss, I'm in charge.
Very well.
Originally, we had a little bit of a side
I was just
story
gonna
with
say,
Beastman.
Yes.
Right?
No, I was going to say the only things of Tim's that kind of got trimmed out was there was this Beastman clearly has a thing for dominant women.
Yeah.
So like with Evil-Lyn being gone, he kind of like
he defaults to the strongest female voice, and just like he says to her, like at one point, I smell a fight, and in the script it's I smell a fight, ma'am.
It wound up dropping it just by virtue of the fact that it just felt like a bridge too far.
And it was you don't have time for everything. That's just what happens. You get into it, you realize, ooh, this scene plays longer. We need more time here, and so it doesn't serve the story to have those little asides.
And some of those editorial decisions too come from the directors. Mm-hmm. For example, like as Tim was talking about, like it used to be in the beginning of his episode that they entered Subternia. The directors are like, this would be a better ending for episode 3. Episode 1 originally went all the way to, them going to Snake Mountain.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah,
wow, yeah.
Where she was like, Majestra sends them to Snake Mountain. And then picked up, like, when the flashback to Wolf Gate. Because that's how we also opened 3 with a flashback. But to balance the episode, they moved a chunk of 1 into 2, and then some things left from 2.
That was great, because we really needed to live in that episode 1 a little bit more, right?
As much as possible.
You don't notice it when you're in the room, when you're talking through the story, but then you see it play out, and you're like, we want more of this fight. We want more in Eternos.
And you want to see their world before we upend their world.
Yeah.
And so, like, there you're seeing, this fight is fantastic. They did such a great job.
Yeah, she gets to employ some shady tactics and...
And also, these are the moments that are the most like anime-ish, like when they get into some of the battle stuff. Mm-hmm. But they put these shots of him and her fighting in the trailer, the story trailer.
Yeah.
And nobody fucking fell for it. Everyone saw his red eyes, and most people are like, it's faker, but they know that that's not really them fighting and stuff. But
this scene
she is fighting a version of him, which is the version she's got in her head. She's trying to deal with all this shit that she carries with him being gone and having lied to her.
Talk about smart streamlining, getting to the story and getting through it. Originally, in the script, the first draft had her fighting a spectral man-at-arms.
Yeah.
Then He-Man, and then spectral Tila. And the man-at-arms stuff...
That was the directors. The directors were like, You don't need it.
It really did feel like a repeated beat when you got to He-Man.
Well, especially like they had just spent episode 3 kind of mending fences with Duncan.
Yeah.
So suddenly the idea of like, I still got shit with Duncan. I guess it was like, well, let's just leave it about her fighting He-Man and then her fighting herself. Because that's what it comes
so
down.
smart.
Yeah, that shit. I remember there was a moment where I was like, do we really let him punch her like that? And they were like, it's not him. It's Scareglow.
It's Scareglow,
like,
and also, I think you have to, for this piece of the story, you have to feel like she could lose to her fear, here. And
just to his gigantic fucking strength.
It's true.
Like she's obviously powerful. She's got some arms and stuff, but like this is the most powerful man in the universe.
Oh, and also Scareglow. He's no slouch. You saw him. He's pretty big.
This was kind of dope, man. That's when they bring her in, and I love seeing young version of Teela.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of the fact that we spend so much time with this grown-up, hard-hearted Teela. And I love everything the boys did, but I was. The haircut, I was always like, I liked her long hair.
Yeah.
And later on, the hair will change, but...
conceptually,
where it was kind of like, it's a nod to Supergirl.
Yeah.
When what's her sister cut her hair for that season and stuff. So
I think it looks cool. But I love classic Teela. But conceptually, I love the idea. I love the fact that they used the old design and then she's fighting the new version because that whole moment is about you're afraid of what you're becoming.
Yes.
And we're seeing between the two of them that sort of passage of time and growth.
And it's threading a needle early, too, because this is episode 4, and what she's becoming doesn't really get hardcore addressed until episode 6. But we had to start doing it now. So Tim is laying in big seeds that have everything to do with, like, the next 5 episodes. And, like, if you've ever watched a single television program, you're probably already ahead of us and know what that's all about. But for those of you who are still like, I don't know, what is happening? I'm not going to spoil it for you. But this is an important episode for the next half of our show. Something's going on, particularly right here, kids, that might have a lot to do with what happens later.
Regardless of what the specifics of that are, the concept that Teela is coming into her power, as a character, just as someone who may have been, He-Man's friend and part of the team, but maybe we never saw her come into her own power. I think we all thought this was going to be a good opportunity. Because they all do. I mean, all these characters come into their power they all engage with the power in a different way.
I think of it as a lapsed Catholic story.
Ooh.
Because, she was raised in the faith and believed everything they told her. And then one day, somebody was like, there is no Santa Claus. And, she was like, fuck all you liars.
This shit's getting personal right now.
A little bit, man. From the man who made Dogma, I still got issues. But the question is, will she ever return to the faith?
Yeah.
Tim. I guess we'll have to find out.
Stay tuned.
This is, I remember somebody online was like, there's definitely going to be a fucking shot of Teela holding the power sword. And I was like, I could confidently tell you that that's not the case. And if anybody uses that as an example, I'd be like, that's not the power sword. That's one half of the power sword. You can't do shit with that sword. You got to get the other half and then forge them together. Then you got a power sword.
Poke, stab. That's about all you get.
That's about it. It's poke and stick. That's all she got. Yeah. So look at this. Like, Teela's won her battle against herself and Scareglow. All of our heroes have had their moment where it's just like they vanquished their demons, got rid of the darkness, figured things out, worked as friends. Nothing could be better than all this. And now that we have the fucking sword, this is going to get us into Preternia.
Right. This half will help us find the other half. That's what Evil-Lyn is saying. Give me the sword because you don't know what you're effing doing. You're like, I can do this. And so...
You're a big Rings guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I was not a big Rings guy. I watched them, and I didn't read those books as a child. They were like fucking this thick as a dick.
I didn't read them when I was a kid either.
You didn't? As an adult? I probably wouldn't even do it now. I definitely wouldn't do it now. I had plenty of time, and I'm like, I've seen the movies. That's enough. But there were moments. This is very much a Rings moment, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think so. I think, anytime you have like it's like the sword, this like MacGuffin, this thing, and what it needed for me, that stuff never interested me. There you go. That's very, what is it? Bella, speak, friend, and enter, right? So yeah, certainly visually we get that here, but I felt like, it needs to be about like what does Evil-Lyn bring to the team here. So we're seeing her; she's part of the team. Let's see what it is that she can do.
And she has these like mage abilities, like she's not just like good at magic. Like holy shit, she can open the door to heaven.
And she used the last bit that she felt she had to do it, which Orco enlightens us about right here.
So if you're like if you've watched the previous episode, you're like, all right, they ended by going into hell. In this episode, they're going to end by going into heaven. You don't see this coming because she's already fucking defeated Scareglow. But then this shit happens, man. My man comes back for the battle, and everybody tries to just fucking run for it. They don't want to fight again and stuff, but they get trapped. And this is where, people win Emmys, kids. This is where Tim wins his Emmy. This is where Griffin wins his Emmy.
They have Emmys for cartoons?
They better. Yeah, they got Annies, right? Sure. Annies for everybody.
Annies.
This was a moment as we were in the writer's room, and we were like, look, he's already depowered. He's already kind of sick. What if he got to go out a hero? That's why Tim layers it on so fucking thick. In the backstory department when he's talking about like not being good at anything, and when Evil-Lyn is like, that's your parents talking and shit like that. That sounded like an incredibly personal. I love that.
I don't know. Right what you know,
so
man. Right what you know, right?
Exactly. But like here we felt like, what if he's the guy? What if he saves everybody? What if it's the little boy against the fucking powers of hell?
It's what I've waited for my whole life, is to see Orco come into his power the way that everybody else comes into their power in this episode.
Earn the hero badge that we saw in episode 3.
Earn it. So many people are dismissive of Orco, and we can kind of laugh, and he's a funny character, and that's what what he's saying in the beginning. People laugh. It's now there's nobody left to laugh. So what do I do now? I become the fucking hero.
So awesome when he goes, he can't scare me.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. All of this. I remember crying when I read the script, and I knew what was coming.
You sent me a little video clip of you crying after you read it.
So fucking good. It still fucking kills me. And then you throw on I watched it without a Bear McCreary score for so long. I read it without a Bear McCreary score. He fucking gives Orco the heroic theme. If you listen closely, he takes Orco's like goofy theme and turns it into this epic, tragic moment. So we felt like, look, kids are going to watch this. Is primarily we're making this for grown-ups, but they're going to bring their kids into it. Orco is a child's way into this show. And what better thing to show a kid than like, you can be a hero too. It's not always just the adults. Like even the smallest can make a difference, man. And
then
yes, you may die, but that's all part of it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was awful. It killed all. Remember, we were all agonizing over this, and it was like, are we really gonna do this?
Agonizing, but also like, yeah, let's fucking do it.
Well, there was certainly the bloodlust kicked in, but when you think about it, he's an important, iconic character. But I think what we settled on was the idea is that he is so magical as a creature, as a character, and the point here is that the magic is dying, and there kind of isn't a place for him in this new version of the universe.
Well, it's so sad and so true. I showed my kid this moment the other day because she was like, I like that little guy. I was like, Orco, let me show you his whole arc. And I even showed her this, and she fucking bawled. She was like, why? And I'm like, you sound like the internet. That's what they're going to say, too. I was like, just trust your father. This will make sense one day.
I think this is another great example of being dialed back by smarter people, because I'm pretty sure in the script I had his death be pretty gory.
Yes, it was a little more graphic.
It was awful.
We actually saw his face, too. Yeah. I think in one version of it, like, before he dies, you see his actual face. But Powerhouse was just like, come on.
Yeah, no, they were right.
Yeah, no,
they were right.
No, we're not.
Sometimes I like to touch the stove, steal some cookies, see what happens.
I would have liked to have seen what that looked like, but I'll be honest with you, probably best that we never see.
No, it's
particularly in his last moment, because that's all anyone would ever talk about. It's like, oh, remember what he looked like? Here they talk about him dying a hero, and then
here he is,
which we owe that moment, end episode 5, which Eric wrote, to the great John Ostrander. I've told this story before, in as much as a character who's a main character dies and goes to heaven. And then that person is going to have to make a choice to leave paradise to help their friends. John Ostrander did that in Grimjack years ago. That storyline, I fucking loved it. So when I wrote Green Arrow years later, that's what I did. And when I pitched this, I was like, what if what if we Ostrander this? What if he dies and he's in heaven and they get to see him in heaven, and then the big choice is like, do I stay or do I go? Set up fantastically by Tim as we head into episode 5.
Let me tell you, this stuff is a team sport. And, with Mark and Dia and Eric and you and Rob and Teddy and the folks at Powerhouse.
And Pat and Adam, our directors, also it is very much a stew. It's like Stone Soup. It's that fucking story from childhood where it's like everybody brings something from home and I've got a magic rock. And the magic rock's supposed to make the soup, but it's everything that everybody brings to it. And even moments like that line, like that's your parents talking, that will connect with an audience. You could say, like, I loved writing the faux Shakespearean dialogue and shit like that. But when you say something real like that, you got to realize that, like, think about it. There are going to be parents and kids watching this episode together. A moment like that, a line like that could have a healing effect. You could be like, if you're the kind of adult that gives a fuck about your kid enough to like sit down and be like, watch this thing because I used to like it when I was a kid. And that line hits you in a specific way, you might reevaluate your relationship and be like, oh shit, like maybe I want to be more supportive and stuff like that. We get to play that beat again in the second half with King Randor as well.
That's the stuff I love, and I feel like, when I was a kid, I always reached for stuff that people told me was outside of my reach of understanding as a kid. But I always reached for it, and I think it helped me grow. I'm stretching for all that stuff.
Right.
And
There's the secret right there. If people are like, how do I write like that? Lean your kid into like porn. He says grown-up material. Just give him grown-up
That's
shit.
what I'm saying.
Give him an example. What is like?
Well, for me, it was the old classic '86 Transformers the movie,
which is way too old for somebody who's a kid.
Particularly
with death.
Yeah, we all watched the show, and it was no consequences at the end of the episode. Lasers miss each other, nobody really gets hurt, and everything's reset, and we do the next episode.
Right.
And then you go into the movie, and like the first thing that happens is the bad guys die, or the good guys die.
Yeah.
Sorry, and the bad guys win, and then Optimus Prime dies, and I'm sitting there, I'm like a kid staring at the screen.
What did they do to my childhood?
But I was riveted. And I learned the lesson that nobody else was going to teach me at that point, that sometimes the good guys lose.
It's true.
And it doesn't mean that it's over.
It makes for a compelling story. It makes you even more interested in the story.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get bored of look, if you look at the old episodes of Masters of the Universe, pretty formulaic, and he's always going to win at the end of the day and stuff. So what Teddy, our boss, gave us marching orders for was like, just give me stakes. Make me believe that anything could happen to them, that they could die. And you're right. Now that you fucking say that, like, that's how I should have been out there on the internet all this time, going like, look, remember the Transformers movie compared to the Transformers TV show? That's what we're talking about here. It is. It's just like, we give them stakes. We grow it up a little bit. Same thing. All the characters you know and love, we're not like, that was all a lie. We're like, that was all the truth. But this is what happens when one of them drops dead.
But also when we deal in nostalgia, which is what I certainly do a lot.
Yeah, my stock and trade as well.
Yeah, but the idea, I think the way it always works best is when we give you the feeling that you remember feeling when you first watched the old show, or even more when you played with the toys.
Yes.
Because the stakes and the drama were, I don't know about you, they were so much higher for me playing with the toys.
The game, exactly. Yeah. These cats could kill each other.
Characters died all the time in my bedroom when I'm playing with the toys.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, but that's the feeling we try to evoke. And if we do that, and that's what then the folks who grew up with it connect with it, and the kids who are watching it get to reach for that the way that I reached for Transformers the movie.
We saw that with the teaser, people's reaction to the teaser, like being like, oh my God, it looks like my childhood come to life. Mm-hmm. But really, if you go back and look at those episodes, you're like, come on, your childhood never looked like this.
Right.
Like this animation is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying like that had nothing to do with me, that has to do with Powerhouse. But like, there's a huge difference between what you remember about that show and that show itself. So, like for years I've been going, this is a spiritual sequel to the Filmation show. Spiritual is the big word there, not sequel. Spiritual, because if we were literally sequelizing that show, you couldn't. It's episode. We would just make 10 episodes where they go on adventures and somebody gives a moral at the end of it. And that's what you can get from the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show that they're doing, the CG one, the kind of all family show and stuff. This was meant to be the continuation of the classic storyline, just with everybody kind of more mature.
I don't know about you, but my instinct when I hear people say stuff like that was like, this looks just like I want to fight. I want to fight.
Yeah,
I'm
like, how dare
this
you?
Is so look at how this looks. It looks so much better. But the fact is,
the catbird seat, though. Yeah,
it means that we did our job.
And it's like, and the illusion is working because people are like, oh my God, it looks exactly like my childhood. And it's like, it looks better, but that's okay.
Boy, nobody's as big a fan of us as us, I think.
We love this show. We've been living with this show for like 2 fucking years, man. That's why I'm so glad that it's out there in the world and other people can see it. And we'll see if we were right.
We'll see.
But I don't think we're just butt sniffing. I don't think we're like, oh man, fucking our shit don't stink. Like, we managed to make a wonderful little epic, ladies and gentlemen, a big adventure epic. And for me, it was like something I don't normally do. Tim plays with the big toys all the time. Batman, Transformers, stuff like that. Picking up somebody else's toys is a little nerve-wracking, but I honestly feel like any Masters of the Universe fan would feel like, my God, you guys treat us... It's just like Bear. Bear was like, I watched this show when I was growing up. When I read your scripts, he was like, I was blown away at how seriously you were treating it. When I saw the animatics, couldn't fucking believe it. When I saw the final animation, he's like, that's why I had to hire an orchestra to do my score. He's going like, you guys are playing at a high level. Like, and not that, like, we're brilliant. He's just going, like, you're playing it seriously. We're all treating it incredibly seriously.
Well, we felt safe because we had Rob and Teddy. Now, they're not infallible gods among men.
They pretty much are when it comes to this shit, to Motu. Other things in life, maybe not. But, like, those two guys and Masters of the Universe, like I said, they were our bumpers, man.
But for us to have that feeling of safety when we're writing it, when we're just brainstorming, coming up with stuff.
And collaboration.
That's everything. And
remember, like, Teddy was there when we did our first writer's room session. We're all sitting on couches. Teddy's, like, kneeling on the floor on the table, crawling around, going, like, oh, you could do this. Yes, throwing in ideas.
He was doing his cringer.
Yes. Yeah. So it was... there's a reason we like it so much.
Yeah.
So much so that you're a guy that does a thing and then you move on and do another thing. You're a journeyman.
Yeah, well, I have been. Yeah.
What is, like, I had such a good time with this. Like, it makes me a little nervous about doing it again because I'm like, it'll never be that wonderful.
I'm at a point, and this is just, this happens like probably to everybody. I don't know, you had a different experience sort of coming into this. You kind of like, you followed your dream, you did a thing, and it was real big and splashy, and, you got to kind of do...
I came in the back door.
You got to do, well, so to speak. What? What am I implying? No, I'm at a point now where I'm starting to look at stuff. Now, this show is one of the first times that I've ever watched the final product after I handed off the script and went
and felt good,
fucked off and did what I want to do. I came back to it and I'm like, oh my God, this is everything I dreamed of and more.
You wrote. Yeah.
Sometimes you watch it and you think, I wish I had a seat at the table. I wish I could have given a note here and there on this thing,
Tim not only fucking had a seat at the table and gave notes on his episode and stuff. He also, like, we had
they weren't called for. No one wanted them.
Yeah, it was like, fuck your notes. But we did a watch along. We were watching the episodes, and there was one moment in episode 1 where you were like, I feel like to set up the Adam King Randor thing that we know that we're doing in the back half, he's like, he really should come at him harder, or at least be critical, because he wasn't in the original draft. He wasn't really critical. Adam was like, look at Duncan, he's beaming with pride. And I think the original line was like, that's parental pride, Adam. Something you'll feel one day when you're a father. Implying that he's proud of his kid. But Tim was like, that's the only thing I bumped into. He's going, because in order to land where we're going to land, he can't be proud of it.
It was also because we were going into working on the comics.
Yeah.
The prequel comics. And that was
which Tim wrote. the Dark Horse books.
Yeah, but that was because the relationship between Randor and Adam was a key point in the comics, and I thought, ooh, in order for this to sort of marry and make sense, it felt like we were missing an opportunity there with one line in the first episode. I thought
half the line changes, and it changes everything.
I said it out loud, and I'm like, we watched every episode that day, and I was like, there's no way Kevin's going to remember that line from episode 1, and then like, I don't know, a couple weeks later,
I sent it to you.
You sent it to me, you're like, hey, great note, thanks.
It made all the difference, because then the line goes for him being like, that's parental pride, Adam. Something I hope I can feel one day as your father. Line completely changes, and you're like, what a dick.
Really swung in the other direction.
But buys us where we eventually have to go. It also buys his big reaction to He-Man's death, finding out that He-Man was Adam.
Yeah.
So he feels this betrayal and shit like that. And it's also, you could tell, because his whole life he, kind of treated Adam less than he could have and stuff. He championed He-Man, but Adam was like, you should be more like He-Man and stuff. So, yeah, there's some beautiful crap, man. There's a lot of parental stuff in this episode.
I mean,
You're the right man to hand it to.
I don't even think I consciously knew that there was a lot of parental stuff.
It is, and in retrospect.
Do you know, we did an issue of the comics. The third issue is basically the Evil-Lyn issue.
Yes.
Which ties in heavily to Evil-Lyn's story in a big way. I mean, it should, but it really does. And that, to me, was the thrill of a lifetime. After having written Evil-Lyn in the show with Lena's voice in my head.
So now you can write to that voice
on
the page.
Man, Evil-Lyn cartoon or comic book spin-off series, please. That's what I
Right? Especially like, well, I mean, I don't need, they got it. One day you'll see the back 5. But wait till you see where the character gets to go. There's some great stuff, which really sets up a wonderful future as well. But man, oh man, killed it, right? Took us to hell and fucking killed it. Was the absolute right man for the job, for heaven's sakes. And pleasure to read your fucking scripts. Tim wrote 1 in the first 5 and then 2 in the back 5, right?
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough. This was a wonderful experience. I had the best
thank you enough. You literally like fucking made it better. So like Ted, proof that Ted Biaselli like knows what he's doing. He was like, there's a guy who'd be perfect. And he was absolutely fucking perfect. Is perfect. Thank you for making this thing, man. I've watched it so many fucking times, and I cry over and over when he dies every fucking time. So well fucking.
I'm gonna be a pariah. You know that.
Yeah, well, they should.
Blame Kevin.
Look,
he could have stopped it.
I'll just say this: if you've ever seen television or movies before,
Come on.
You really think?
I don't know. Don't get their hopes up over, something.
I'm just saying, it's a long life, kids. Long life. Not for Orco, he died.
No, he's dead.
For others, it's a long life.
You never know other stuff.
Magic has a way of ... In any event, give it up for the great Tim Sheridan, ladies and gentlemen. He did you justice. And don't forget, if you haven't, go out and get the Dark Horse tie-in comics. It's 3 issues, right? 4, and with gorgeous fucking covers, gorgeous artwork.
Mindy Lee, yeah.
Mindy Lee's stuff looks incredible.
She's great.
Absolutely wonderful. So, please, if you like Revelation, that series is written by one of the Revelation writers, and me and Rob.
Story by you and Rob.
Yeah. So it's like, it ties in. It ain't an adjunct that's like, oh, I guess like this is just to remind us of the characters. I'm not saying without it you won't understand Revelation, but with it, oh my God, Revelation will be that much richer for you. There it is, kids, for Masters of the Universe Revelation celebration, a celebration of the writers of Masters of the Universe, man. Tim Sheridan has been our guest. Hire this man, kids. If you've got any control, or grow up to be this cat. Take your life lessons from him. We didn't ask, when did you want to start writing? When did you figure out you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, man. For the longest time, I told myself I could not be a writer.
Why?
Because I thought, other people do it better. And so, therefore, why would I ever try?
Why try anything on that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a trick that we do, a mind trick that we use on ourselves. Yeah. And I don't know what happened, man. One day I woke up and I was like, however, there are a lot of hacks who make a really good living. And I could do at least as good as that.
And that's like something a lot of people, like when people used to attack me on the internet, well, I hate you and your shit. Your shit sucks. I'm always like, great.
I apologize for that.
Yeah, I'd be like, Tim, fucking, one day we might write together. But when they do that, I would always be like, look, that's great, but if I'm you, I'm not wasting my time telling me how much you don't like me. I'm using that fire to get where I want to get to. Like Tim was like, I'm not good enough. But then he was like, you know what? I've watched a lot of shit where people are bad enough and they got the job. So why not me, man? So that ain't him being like, I'm better than these fucks. But it's him going like, if that's allowed, then I definitely have a shot, particularly because I know what I'm doing. I think I could give them compelling shit.
It's like, I'm not going to write Raiders of the Lost Ark. Who is going to write Raiders of the Lost Ark now, But, hey, I can make a living.
You've done more than that.
And have fun.
You're making high art, my friend. Fucking Long Halloween, how surprised were you weren't crucified?
Oh my gosh, the response has been really,
Really,
really
really
good, which I'm surprised because that's you're taking an iconic thing.
Everybody knows that book.
Yeah, and by virtue of the fact that you're translating it into cinema, something that's a monthly comic book, a whole different way of telling a story, slow burn too, which doesn't really necessarily work in a movie. I thought the choices we made were, going to be really tough to pass. Muster for the fans, but people really dig it.
With it.
They've really dug it, so it's good.
He's DCing you, man. He's making all your favorite DC shit come to life over at DC. And here he brought fucking life to Scareglow and all our characters. If you love what he did in episode 4, kids, wait till you see what he does. What'd you have? 7 and 9? No.
7 and 9.
7 and 9.
Yeah.
Like amazing.
You heard it here first.
Episodes. Yeah, that's right. Nobody.
Yeah. We know
I
that.
guess we're spoiling information. There it is. I guess it's information that there is a 7 and 9 too. Technically, they weren't guaranteed that. They'll be. Yeah, yes, there's a 7 and 9.
Yeah.
And Tim wrote them, and you'll love them. There it is, kids. For Masters of the Universe Revelation Celebration, I'm Kevin Smith,
I'm Tim Sheridan.
and you have the power. This is the cat.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the AKA Ask Kev Anything.
Every saga has a 10-year anniversary, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what happens when Jay and Silent Bob get old. I'm Kevin Smith. Cheers, if you